It was supposed to be just another ordinary evening. The city lights shimmered across the skyline, the hum of traffic echoing in the streets below. But on this night, something unexpected was about to unfold, something that would change the way we see the Trump family forever. Barron Trump, often regarded as the quiet and reserved son of the former president, had always been a figure somewhat in the background. His private life was fiercely protected, shielded from the media spotlight that relentlessly targeted his parents. Yet tonight, he was about to step into the spotlight in a way no one could have predicted. It began innocently enough at a press event. The air was thick with anticipation as journalists and celebrities mingled, some exchanging pleasantries, others jockeying for attention. And then, out of nowhere, came the sharp voice of one of the most notorious liberal journalists in the country. Known for his biting sarcasm and cutting remarks, he had built a career on mocking those he deemed unworthy of the public's affection. But tonight, he chose to target Barron Trump. Standing at the edge of a crowd, the journalist smirked as he approached Barron, delivering a barb that echoed across the room. "Well, well, if it isn't the forgotten Trump. What's it like being the only one in the family with no real power, no influence? Just a ghost in the shadows." The crowd held its breath, waiting for Barron's response. Everyone knew the son of a former president had always been the quiet one, the one who kept to himself. The journalist's words were sharp, calculated, designed to provoke a reaction. But no one expected what came next. The air seemed to still as Barron, standing at least a foot taller than most of those around him, looked the journalist in the eye. His gaze was calm, but there was an intensity there that no one had seen before. A silence fell over the room as Barron, in a voice that was steady but unyielding, responded with a single sentence. The journalist, his smug grin still plastered on his face, was about to be blindsided in a way that no one saw coming. No one, not even the most seasoned media pundits, were prepared for the power of Barron Trump's words. The silence that followed was deafening. And it left everyone in the room, and perhaps the entire nation, questioning everything they thought they knew about the Trump family. The room remained frozen, a heavy silence hanging in the air. The journalist's attempt to provoke had clearly backfired, but what Barron Trump said next would only add fuel to the fire. It was clear that everyone was waiting for the next move. Barron was always the quiet one, the one who preferred to keep his distance, rarely engaging with the media or the public. He had learned to live in the shadows of his famous father, not seeking attention or accolades. But tonight, everything was different. The liberal journalist, standing confidently just a few feet from Barron, didn't expect to be met with such composure. He had expected a stammer, an uncomfortable laugh, or perhaps even an angry outburst. But Barron's calm was unsettling. He met the journalist's gaze with a piercing, almost serene intensity that left the audience feeling the weight of every word. The journalist chuckled nervously, clearly trying to regain control of the moment. "Come on, Barron, don't tell me you're too shy to answer a simple question." He leaned in, his tone mocking. "What is it like knowing that your family's empire is built on controversy? Do you ever wish for a life where your name wasn't associated with scandals and drama?" The crowd held its breath. This wasn't just any typical exchange. This was the rare moment where Barron, often portrayed as a silent bystander, was now standing up for himself in front of the cameras. The tension was palpable. But instead of reacting defensively, Barron responded in the most unexpected way. His voice was calm, almost soothing, as he began to speak. "Everyone has a choice," he said, his words carrying a weight that silenced the room. "My family has made theirs, and I respect them for it. But my life is mine to live. The mistakes and choices of others don't define who I am." A stunned hush swept across the room. Barron's words weren't just powerful, they were wise. There was no anger, no defensiveness. His response was so calm, so measured, that it almost felt like he had been preparing for this moment for years. His philosophy was clear. He was not a product of the controversies surrounding his family. He was his own person. The liberal journalist, now visibly uncomfortable, tried to press further. "But you can't deny that your name has given you privileges that others can only dream of. You don't have to worry about paying bills, or struggling to make ends meet. Doesn't that bother you? Knowing that you've been handed everything?" For a moment, Barron said nothing. He simply stood there, his gaze unwavering, his composure never slipping. The room waited for him to speak again, and when he did, his words were even more striking than before. "I don't believe in luck," he said softly. "I believe in hard work and responsibility. The opportunities one have are the result of hard work. But the way I choose to live, with kindness, humility, and respect, that's something I control." The journalist's smirk faded, and for the first time in the evening, he was caught off guard. Barron's quiet confidence and clarity of purpose were impossible to ignore. He wasn't playing into the narrative of the spoiled rich kid. Instead, he was asserting his individuality with poise and grace. As the exchange continued, Barron's words resonated deeper with the crowd. He wasn't speaking from a place of arrogance, but from a place of wisdom that seemed beyond his years. With every question, Barron remained calm, answering with a sort of introspection and maturity that left people wondering just who this young man really was. "You see," Barron continued, "everyone has their own path. Some are born into wealth, others into hardship. But the way we walk that path is what matters. I've chosen to walk it with respect for others, with a sense of responsibility that I believe is essential in this world. People may judge me based on who my family is, but that's not how I define myself." The journalist, now visibly flustered, began to stammer, searching for another angle to attack. But Barron was unshaken. His composure was unwavering, his philosophy clear. He wasn't just responding to the attacks, he was teaching the room something far more valuable than any media soundbite. As the conversation began to die down, the crowd remained silent, reflecting on Barron's words. The journalist, clearly defeated, turned away without another word. His attempt to provoke had failed, not because Barron had avoided confrontation, but because he had risen above it. His quiet strength had disarmed the most seasoned of media figures, leaving everyone in the room in awe. The moment was more than just a victory for Barron. It was a lesson in composure, humility, and the power of staying true to one's own values, no matter the noise around you. The journalist may have been the one with the microphone, but it was Barron Trump who had the final word. And in that moment, Barron's response didn't just leave the journalist speechless, it left the entire room rethinking everything they thought they knew about the Trump family. The moment that had everyone on edge was finally upon them. The liberal journalist, now visibly shaken, was desperately trying to recover from the reality of what had just happened. Barron Trump had not only stood his ground, but his words had left an indelible mark on the crowd, one that no one could ignore. The air in the room felt charged, like a quiet storm was brewing. Everyone knew something big was about to happen. The tension was palpable. But Barron, unperturbed by the rising drama, simply stood tall, his presence commanding the room. His calm composure was beginning to have a profound effect on the people around him. It wasn't just his stature that drew attention, it was the undeniable strength of his words, and the wisdom he spoke with. The journalist, now visibly struggling to regain control, made one last attempt. His voice, though tinged with frustration, carried a hint of disbelief. "You talk a lot about respect and humility," he said, almost sneering. "But how can you claim to live by those values when your family's name is synonymous with power, division, and controversy? Can you honestly say you stand for anything more than just being the product of your father's name?" The room seemed to hold its breath, expecting Barron to falter, to react. The journalist's words were sharp, laced with bitterness and a desire to provoke a final outburst. It was clear that he was trying to paint Barron as nothing more than a puppet, a figurehead controlled by the legacy of his father. It was a low blow, but Barron, calm as ever, was unshaken. His eyes locked with the journalist's, and for a moment, there was a silence that spoke louder than any words could. Barron's voice, when it came, was soft but incredibly powerful. "It's easy to attack what you don't understand," he said. "My father's name is a part of my life, yes, but it does not define who I am. I've worked hard to build my own path, just like anyone else should. I don't expect anyone to agree with everything my family has done, but I do ask for the same respect that any other person deserves." The journalist's expression faltered, a moment of uncertainty crossing his face. He wasn't expecting this. Barron wasn't responding with anger, but with quiet defiance, a defiance rooted not in arrogance, but in understanding that his worth was not tied to the mistakes of others. The crowd, once skeptical, began to shift. Some were nodding, others were leaning in, captivated by Barron's poised, thoughtful responses. His words were like an unspoken challenge to the media, to the world that had been so quick to judge him based on his family's legacy. But Barron's next words hit like a thunderclap. "I'm not asking for forgiveness for my last name," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "I'm not asking for people to forget the past. But I do ask that you recognize my humanity. I'm a young man, trying to find my own place in the world, trying to make a difference in the way I know how. And I will do it with respect, with dignity, and with love for everyone, no matter who they are or where they come from." The room fell into complete silence. No one moved. No one dared to speak. The journalist, his bravado shattered, stood frozen, unsure of how to respond. He had been looking for a confrontation, But Barron had delivered something far more profound. It wasn't a fiery retort. It wasn't a defensive outburst. It was a calm declaration of truth, a statement that demanded respect, not through force, but through maturity and grace. Barron Trump had just silenced the room, but it wasn't just through his words. It was through his strength of character. His ability to rise above the fray, to navigate the storm without losing his footing. The journalist, once so eager to tear him down, now found himself speechless. He had underestimated Barron's capacity for wisdom. And in that moment, Barron had proved that he was more than just the son of a former president. He was a man in his own right. As the silence lingered, Barron took a step back, his eyes still fixed on the journalist. His posture was relaxed, but his gaze was unwavering. The weight of the room's collective attention seemed to press down on the journalist, whose earlier confidence had evaporated. He was no longer the one in control of the narrative. Barron had reclaimed his agency, not through anger or confrontation, but through the quiet power of his own voice. It was then that the realization hit. Barron Trump was no longer the shy, introverted teenager who had stayed hidden in the background. He had just stepped forward, claiming his space in the world with a wisdom and strength that made the world sit up and take notice. The tables had turned, and the journalist, for the first time that evening, understood that he had lost this battle, and he had lost it to a quiet force, more powerful than he had ever imagined. The crowd slowly began to applaud, not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect. What had started as a brutal confrontation had transformed into a lesson in humility, self-respect, and the quiet strength that can change the course of any battle. The journalist, unable to respond, simply turned and walked away. The cameras continued to roll, but the narrative had shifted. What had been a moment of mockery had become a moment of triumph, not for Barron Trump's family, but for Barron Trump as an individual. As the applause continued to fill the room, Barron Trump stood there, surrounded by a crowd that had once doubted him, now looking at him with a new respect. The journalist who had sought to provoke him now stood silent in the distance, his earlier confidence shattered. It was a surreal moment, one that felt almost like a turning point not just for Barron, but for everyone who had witnessed the event unfold. In that brief, tense exchange, Barron had proven that the true measure of a person isn't defined by the power of their family name or the weight of public opinion. It's defined by how they carry themselves in moments of adversity, how they respond to mockery with grace, and how they rise above the noise of the world. Barron had shown the world that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's quiet. It's composed. It's a calm force that doesn't need to shout to be heard. As the evening wound down and the crowd dispersed, the weight of Barron's words lingered in the air. People who had come with their own judgments, their own preconceived notions of him, now found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew. Barron had turned a moment of mockery into a testament to human resilience and dignity. He had shown that we don't need to fight fire with fire, or anger with anger. Sometimes, the most powerful response is simply to stand tall in your truth and let your actions speak for themselves. What was even more remarkable was Barron's ability to connect with the hearts of those who were watching. His words weren't just for the journalist or the crowd in that room. They were for anyone who has ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or silenced. In the face of ridicule, Barron had not retaliated with bitterness. Instead, he chose to rise above, to offer wisdom instead of rage, and to assert his own identity with dignity. Barron's response was a powerful reminder that every person has the ability to stand firm in their beliefs, no matter how challenging the situation. In a world where it often feels easier to succumb to negativity, where it's tempting to respond to cruelty with cruelty, Barron's choice to respond with kindness and introspection was a quiet revolution. He showed that there's power in being calm, in taking a step back before reacting, and in choosing to lead with integrity instead of following the loudest voices around you. The journalist may have walked away defeated, but Barron's victory was far greater than any verbal sparring match. His triumph was in the quietness of his strength, the humility in his words, and the courage to speak his truth without anger. Barron had proven that true power doesn't need to be forceful or aggressive. It can be subtle, graceful, and rooted in deep self-awareness. This moment wasn't just about Barron Trump. It was a message for anyone who has ever felt small in the face of criticism or adversity. It was a call to action for those who have been told they're not enough, or that they can't rise above the challenges that life throws at them. Barron had shown that, no matter the odds, you can face the world with dignity and hold your ground in the most difficult of circumstances. You can be the calm in the storm, the strength in the face of adversity. As Barron walked off that stage, his head held high, it wasn't just a moment of personal triumph. It was a message to everyone who watched. Don't let the world define you. Don't let the noise drown out your own voice. In a world that often values loudness over thoughtfulness, Barron had reminded us all that sometimes, silence is louder than any shout. Your strength lies in your ability to stay true to who you are, even when the world wants you to be something else. The crowd left that evening not just with applause ringing in their ears, but with something far more valuable: inspiration. Barron's words had lit a spark, not just in his defenders, but in everyone who had witnessed that quiet, powerful moment of truth. It was a reminder that each of us has the ability to face life with grace, to respond to adversity with dignity, and to rise above the challenges that come our way. Barron Trump had not just answered a journalist's question, he had answered a universal question: how do we rise above? The answer was clear: with courage, with wisdom, with kindness, and with a quiet strength that speaks louder than words ever could.